I am Dr. Adrian Cole. I work at the New York City Institute of Criminal Psychology. Our job is to understand the mind behind the crime, but sometimes the mind hides its own crime. Every week, I go to the city prison. Behind the one-way glass of the interrogation room, I watch the killer's breath. Sometimes they stay silent, sometimes their words pour out like madness. But last month, someone arrived, and his silence was far more dangerous than all the others. Elias Gray, 32 years old, no confession, victim, his own wife. The evidence is complete, but there's no motive. He doesn't speak. He just sits there staring at the glass as if he's talking to someone on the other side. When I first entered the room, it was 9:14. Rain covered Manhattan's windows like a curtain. Without lifting his head, he said, "Listen to the rain, doctor." The time for murder always begins with the sound of rain. His voice was cold, but it had a melody. "Elias," I said, "why are you here?" He smiled. "I'm waiting for you to tell me that." Something inside me stirred, as if he already knew me. The sessions went on for weeks. Each time Elias said one word more, and every word felt like it was about me. One day, he loosened the chain on his wrist and left a note on the table. There were only 3 words: the silent room. There was no such place in any file, but that night, as I left the building, I noticed an old door next to the elevator. A rusted sign above it read, "Maintenance only." Cold air was seeping out from underneath. The next day, Elias began to talk. "You're not going in there, are you?" he asked, "because if you do, I won't be the only one who goes silent." There was a strange knowing in his eyes, as if he had been waiting there for years. That night, I couldn't resist. I found the door. The key wasn't in my pocket, but it wasn't locked either. I went in. A narrow hallway, concrete walls, the floor cold. Far away, a flickering light, and on the walls, sound recordings, hundreds of tapes, each labeled with a date and a name. Some went back years. I picked one up. The label read, Cole A. 2017. My hands trembled as I pressed play. Static filled the air. Then, a familiar voice. My own voice. Adrian Cole, age 32, patient's name Elias Gray. The experiment is under control. Time, mind, and guilt are beginning to merge. Observation, identity shift between subject and therapist has begun. The tape stopped. For a second, only the sound of breathing remained. But the breath wasn't mine. It was as if 2 people were sharing the same body. Then I heard a click outside. The door had closed. The light went out. Elias's voice came from the darkness. "I'm here so you can hear the truth, doctor. Because you created me, the next morning I found myself in my office. No tape in my hand, but there was a note on my desk. Case reopened, Elias Gray / Dr. Cole incident. According to police records, no one named Elias Gray ever existed. But his photo was in the file, and the man in that photo was me. Since that day, I've stopped taking patients, but at night, someone still calls me. A voice from behind the glass, "Listen to the rain, doctor. The time for crime begins again." Sometimes the mind doesn't hide the crime, it becomes the crime itself. I am Dr. Adrian Cole, and I don't know anymore whether I am the patient or the killer. After that day, I stopped the therapy sessions, but the mind never stops working. At night, I began to hear echoes moving through the corridors, Some were whispers, some were breaths, each one familiar. Elias's silence had carved itself into my mind. It was as if every word he didn't speak was echoing inside me. One morning I opened my notebook. One of the pages wasn't in my handwriting. It was filled with a script both familiar and strange. There were only 3 sentences. The rain is starting, doctor. The silence is calling you. The room is still there. The pen slipped from my hand, because even if I had never entered that room had already entered me. One night, between sleep and waking, I woke to the sound of a tape playing. A recorder was blinking on my desk. I hadn't put the cassette in. I pressed play. The experiment continues. Time, mind, and guilt have merged. The therapist is no longer the doctor, but the case itself. The voice was mine, but I had no memory of ever saying those words. The next morning I went to the institute. The hallway was silent. Everything looked normal until I reached the lab. The door had been sealed behind a wall. It was there yesterday. Now it was gone. I placed my hand on the wall. It was cold, but beneath it I felt a faint vibration, like a heartbeat. And in that moment I understood. The silent room was never in the building. It was inside my mind. At night, I open old case files. Patients from years ago, all of them with the same note. The patient has begun to mirror the behavior of the therapist. In one file, I found my own name, the handwriting, familiar. It was Elias's. Beneath it, a single sentence. Doctor, it's your turn now. It's been weeks since I last spoke to anyone. I don't go outside. But sometimes I see a reflection in the window. Someone's standing there watching me, hands in his pockets, standing in the rain, and smiling. Elias, or me. Every night, the same voice. Listen to the rain, doctor. The crime is not over. The middle of the night. Rain echoes through the veins of the city. My coffee has no taste. Time is no longer measured by hours, but by breaths. I look at the last page of my notebook. The lines are tangled. The words have bled together as if someone else is writing in my place. Elias Gray, deceased. Cause of death, overdose during therapy. Doctor in charge, Adrian Cole. In that moment, the world went silent. The pen slipped from my hand. All those years, I tried to understand the minds of criminals, but the real crime was inside my own. Elias Gray never existed. He was the echo I created, a courtroom my mind built to hide a patient's death under the name of therapy. In every session, I questioned him, but in truth, I was questioning my own conscience. That's why he was silent. Because every time I stayed quiet, I kept him alive a little longer. I look at the clock on the wall, 9:14, the moment everything began. Raindrops hit the office window. A reflection appears. Elias, he's there again. But this time he doesn't speak, neither do I. I just lift my head and whisper, I remember now. It was me. The reflection smiles, and his face slowly turns into mine. The lights go out. Only one sound remains in the building, a heartbeat. Then, silence. But this time the silence isn't empty. The room is breathing, the mind is calm, and the sound of rain covers everything. Sometimes the mind doesn't hide the crime, it becomes it. When morning comes, I close the notebook. On the cover, I write a single sentence, case closed. Then I look out the window. Manhattan has turned into a gray dream. A taxi passes by. A man stands in the street looking up at the sky, maybe Elias, maybe me. But it no longer matters, because some crimes are never solved. They're only remembered. Dream Diaries presents the silent room. Sometimes remembering is the punishment,